Hi, this is Reverend Kathy Itzin, and I'd like to welcome you to today's version of Grace, Gratitude, and Generosity. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the perennial tradition. T. Michael has mentioned this many different times in the past, at least around here. And the perennial tradition is the idea that all of the religious faiths in the world share core values. So honesty, integrity, positivity, life giving as a major value. All of these things are part of the perennial traditions, meaning Christianity is not the only one that has it. I've been thinking a little bit about the word perennial, and I think it's kind of a good word for us today. Because I love to garden, I think of perennial plants, which are different than your annuals. Annuals you've got to plant every year and then they die every year. And the perennial idea is that they keep coming up through no matter what. They keep coming up every year. And it reminds me of a minister friend of mine, a story I know. She came from the deep south, and she said her first winter in Minnesota, it was extremely cold and the snow was really, really deep. And she remembers looking out of her window at this garden and knowing that the people said, oh yeah, it'll be a great garden later, and she could not imagine it. It was so covered in snow and ice and depth and cold that she really believed there's no way it's going to make it, that it couldn't possibly. And then in the spring, it came up again. And I've been struck by how many times I read the editorials and things like that, and we've had many editorials written about the values of honesty and against lying, and especially in the political environment that we've had recently, that's come up a lot, as well as the idea of unity and not being polarized with our political beliefs or religious beliefs. And these are two things that keep cropping up in different places, newscasts, papers, kind of everywhere. And I love it. I love that when there is a deep problem and people see it, they call it out. And yes, there's a lot of people who let things slide, but there's even more people who don't. And that we continue to hold these values as really important. And I kind of picture it as like the Spirit of God continuing to raise things up, even when it looks like they're broken or getting worse. They keep coming up and they keep becoming voiced by people like us. And it reminds me of like your body, how you can cut your body, you can fall down and scrape yourself, you could break a bone, but generally speaking, it heals. It's like an invisible force for health within your body. It tries to overcome whatever is attacking it and continue on towards growth and health. And I think that's like the spirit within our creation and within ourselves and our society, that we have the same spirit. And when something is broken or injured, we try to bring it towards healing. And I love that because it's us and it's bigger than us. It's our individual efforts, but it's also that spirit. And I would call it the Spirit of God in my tradition, but that doesn't matter. My kids who are not particularly Christian would say, oh, it's the universal spirit of healing. It's the universal attitude towards love that we all share. It's basic goodness that we try to help everyone towards. And I don't really care what you call it, but I love that there is a force that is bigger than we are, that we work with, that depends upon us, but it's not entirely dependent upon us, that is bigger than that. And we get to join it in working towards healing and in working towards the maintaining of the things that are important to us. And so even when we're challenged by polarization, challenged by violence, challenged by lying in public that seems to gain speed and get going, all of those things are awful, and people consistently fight against it, voice against it, stand against it, and put out into the world the opposites of justice and peace and kindness and tenderness and love. So I love that perennial idea that no matter what happens and how bad it gets, and when it looks like it's kind of dying, there's still life moving underneath, and it still keeps raising these things that are important to us. So thank goodness for the perennial tradition and for us. Amen.